This is putting up hay at Steele Swamp in the 40s, and this is a buck rake team with Jack Parker driving. This is how the hay was bunched in the field and yarded in, and now they're using what they call this is a spot buck. Two teams will bring this hay in, lay it on these nets, and it's pulled up onto a stack. About 1,000 pounds of hay to a load there if it's a good load. That old team is called Smokey and Darky, and they've done this for a number of years. This is another team called Pete and Bob and old R. Cunningham, a great old teamster. They push this hay up, set it on some nets that are on the ground, and then back off, and these two men put the nets, hook them up, and the pull-up team takes it up to the top of the stack. This is how this hay went up on the stack. When the stack gets tall, it goes above it. When it doesn't, it drops over the end, and we're topping this stack out now, so you ride that shock out to the edge so that it builds your stack up. You guys are doing. We put up a 50 to 60 ton stack every day and moved the slide. Usually about 18 to 20 stacks put up out there a year. And this tractor snuck in from someplace. It was first tractor on the ranch in 1936. These old teams did this work well. They enjoyed it, and we had good teamsters came back every year, the same guys to drive the same set of horses. The little guy there stuck his fork in the ground is Winnemucca, and there's a lot of stories you can tell about that old boy. these stacks, if left over, formed a crust about a foot thick, and it protected them, and the hay underneath was just like in a shed, and oftentimes cattle would like the hay that was left over better than the new hay. It cured or something in there. In the background you see a team of horses and a rake, and it's what's called a scatter rake. They go through the field and gather up the hay that was left over or lost out of the buck rakes. And this is just a winter scene out there. In 1952 was the deepest snow we had, and you could ride a horse up on it. You couldn't even see the stockyards. Ride a horse right to the top of a stack, and this is how the hay was fed off. Now we're turning out in the spring in the range, crossing Bowles Creek. That's Ray on one of his colts he's riding. The grass is pretty good. You can't see it, but you can tell those cows are tired of hay and they're wanting to eat some of that grass. It's hard to move them. This is cleaning out some of the ditches. It took 4 head of horses and Ray's on the cart, and you can tell who's doing the work. This is Ray holding one of the saddle horses, giving him a little chance for grass down in the garden before we plowed it. This is Betty riding a colt. She liked to do that. This is Ray. We're loading up about a ton of salt on a wagon, and you go up those old cow trails and put it out for the summer for the cattle. It takes us all day long and several days to do it. Probably the best dog we ever knew. Him up getting the load there. When I hear old club and his banjo ringing, it makes me proud of my old ring, and I'm proud to say I'm a bluegrass singing. The saddle horses out there. This is before they made a chainsaw. That's the way of cutting wood. I worked that hard road, played a lot of shows. I've sung a many a song, I met the Philmont Road. I'm proud to say I'm a bluegrass singing man.
15 acres down in Moonshine Holler. When the creek run dry, we can't make a dollar. Just playing like a bluegrass singing man. Well, I'm proud to say
This must be June. Had a few colts to break to work. On this side's a breaking horse, but he could outrun the colt any day. First time this little gray mare's been hooked up. This is a 5-foot cutting board, always control of the team. You cut 1,000 acres of meadow, you've been someplace in one of those outfits. It's wood burning, possibly many years ago. We spent several winters with us. Ranch from the mid. This is how after the hay was mowed, this is how it was put in windrows. And then following that, you used the buck rake to bunch it into the bunches and yard it into the stalks. This is how the hay was bunched out of the windrows. Just push it along until you got enough that it starts sliding underneath and you back out and pick up another shock. Jack Parker with his smoky darky. This is our Cunningham's, Pete and Bob. They were probably the best buck rake team we ever had. You can see the ranch in the background. The ranch had lots of good horses. This is Mr. Dalton in the garden. He always loved a good garden. He's one of the greatest guys that ever lived. This is moving a bunch of cattle down on the lower end of the ranch. And fly time in the summertime, they had what you call the greenhead fly, and they made it miserable. Switching fields with a little set of cattle. That's Betty on a little wild horse that we roped and broke. Evidently a cow and a calf got through we didn't want, and bringing him back. This is down in the lower end of the meadows. I'm not sure you can see it, but there's a big old buck walking along out there, and Betty's coming up to get us. And we'd made a ride the day before and put these in a holding field, and they left our horses overnight and went back to move the cattle on down. We're about 10 miles from the swamp from here. The little black horse that Ray rides was a wild horse. Still a stud in this picture here. That's a UT horse that we bought. This is how we fed the cattle in the wintertime with what we called a toboggan. It was just runners with a hay rack on top. It was good on the meadow. It didn't leave ruts and tracks. This is loading up a load of that hay we'd stacked. This is about 250, 300 weaner cows and how you fed them in the winter. This ground that's ice you see there in the foreground. It's frozen. Meadow's all frozen. That's old Ray on the right. We're starting a few colts. We used to ride them a little too quick, but we enjoyed them bucking a little, so that's what they call a three-legged hobble. Colt's pretty helpless with it on. I don't think these colts were to buck, but they were encouraged. This is up at Pothole Field, about 5 miles south of Steele Swamp. We had a holding field and a branding corral and had gathered quite a few calves and cows and calves, and we're letting the cows out so that we can brand the calves without them being in there and crowding. That's an old man out there, that's Ray. This guy on the buckskin horse owned the neighboring ranch, and this lady was one of the helpers over there, and they came over to help us brand these cows. Thelma Archer.
can't forget the hours. You're the only one now, and sweeter than the flowers.
That was Ray, and he did not like his picture taken.
I didn't want to remember the day. They all gathered round, I stared at their faces, all hail was round. But that was one time we all had to face it, though it hurt us so bad. Oh no, I can't forget the hours, you're the only one, Mom.
This is Fred Huffman on his horse called Bucky, and Thelma Archer, who just passed away recently. They were on the Willow Creek Ranch, about 16 miles away. This is Betty on Wampy. Fred Huffman roping left-handed.
Showed up in my headlights. I stopped and she got in back, and in a shaky tone.
They always brought a big picnic lunch for these occasions, and as you can see, there was plenty there to eat.
She must have been so frightened.
There were several springs raising up there and made a nice place to have your dinner. That's Ray. This is Fred Huffman discussing the Forest Service, so I'm glad it's not in sound. Fred's showing us a new wrinkle on how to put a deal on to keep a horse's head tucked up. Take note of this trailer and pickup when he loads up. It's a vintage that you'll probably never see again. This is Mom Vowell out in the garden not wanting her picture taken. She got kind of elusive at times. This is Ray getting his where from. He needed it occasionally. And this is one of the worst blizzards that ever blew through that ranch. Those calves were really suffering from it. That's Ray again showing his stuff. dog isn't helping him too much. I looked for the cow to knock him down chasing the dog, but she missed him every time. This fella here does a better job. This is down in the field when it was 40 degrees below zero the morning this picture was taken. That little colt finally eventually froze his feet and had to put him down. And this is how we come down the field with the bobsled. Had a 5-gallon bucket on it and wood in it so that you could warm your pitchfork handles up or they would just break. They were so cold. We fed 90 days with this bobsled, the only winter that it ever could have ever happened. And this is spring, turning them out again on grass. That's old Ray, first gate he ever shot, I think. Looks like the creek's up a little better this year. Still see a big bank of snow on the far side. This old guy on the paint mare, Whit Vernon, he worked for us for a number of years. He's from Lakeview. That's one of the nicest old horses that ever looked through a bridle. Little Australian dog showing off a little bit. Here comes the lone herder, old Ray, and this is a that's Ray. Yeah.
Well, they're believed to be the oldest pair of active cowboy brothers in the United States. When they began roping and riding, Woodrow Wilson was seeking election as President of the United States.
Tonight in part 2 of our series on cowboys and cowgirls, Eyewitness News reporter Chris Egan introduces us to two brothers that may have found the fountain of youth.
Cowboying has taken an awful change. They are using horse trailers to make long rides where we'd saddle up at the barn and we were gone all day and sometimes longer, and that's the way we liked it. We liked to be a horseback, and granted you took your lumps and bumps, but it was well worth it, and we've enjoyed it all our life.
And Herman and his brother Ray have also enjoyed riding side by side through the years. The two brothers have nearly lived in Southern Oregon their entire lives. And from roping to riding, the Vowell boys have basically done it all. But they keep one thing in mind, and that's being a cowboy.
Well, it's the best life in the world. It bruises you up occasionally, but you're with people that are different.
In just a few weeks, Ray Vowell will turn 83 years old. Meanwhile, his brother Herman is recuperating from his second hip surgery. But if you think that's going to keep these cowboys from riding, you better think again.
Really, the good Lord's been good to us because we've done what we wanted to do all these years. Some guys are just, they go from day to day, you know, and on a job they're not happy with, but every morning we couldn't wait to start a new day because we loved what we was doing.
But don't let these rough and tough cowboys fool you. When they're not roping or riding, they're busy teasing each other.
I get so mad at him sometimes, he'll tease me when I'm not in the mood. I might as well laugh because he never quits.
When I come back, Ray'd begin to dry off, and he was the funniest looking thing.
When I get the best of him, then I get over my mad, then he get the best of me, and we just take turns. We fought dirty.
Ray came prancing by me on a little bay horse, was kind of salty, and he had his tail hung in an arch, and I couldn't help it. I stuck the branding iron under there. He was hollering whoa when he hit the brush, and it tore his shirt and lost his hat, and he also lost his temper. When he came back about half an hour later, he's still running, the branding iron was still stuck there.
In Malin with the Vowell brothers, Chris Egan.
Respects to a Southern Oregon man that truly defined being a cowboy. Ray Vowell, who grew up in the Klamath Basin, has been roping and riding his entire life. Even into his 80s, Ray took time to bring in the cattle and team rope with his brother Herman. This past weekend, Ray passed away at the age of 85. Our thoughts and prayers go out to his family. And guys, he was definitely a great man and a great cowboy. Everybody loved this guy in the Klamath Basin.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah. Thanks very much.
You betcha.
There's more ahead tonight on Eyewitness News at 6. The Chinese New Year leaps in like a rabbit.